I welcome you all to Microsoft Azure Pakistan Community 2022 October meetup. And there are some housekeeping rules that I would like to share before I can proceed with my presentation, with the session. On Microsoft Azure Pakistan Community, we plan to meet up at least once a month, especially on Saturdays. And the online meeting would be organized using Microsoft Teams. And the online meeting would be recorded and later uploaded to the Microsoft Azure Pakistan Community YouTube channel. And I will ask all the participants to kindly mute yourself during the meeting. And the meetup time would be around 1 hour to 1 hour and 30 minutes, depending upon the time needed by the presenter. And there would be 10-15 QA 10 minutes QA session in the end. And it is preferable if you can write your questions in the chat window. Since we are a part of Microsoft Azure Tech community, so we follow code of conduct. And you should be friendly and welcoming during the meeting. Be patient, be thoughtful in how you communicate in person and online. Be respectful and inclusive, be open and curious, and reach out to the organizers if you need anything. Today, we have Deepthi who will be telling us about how to be the Star DBA rising in the cloud. And this session is for the people who are DBA interested in learning about Azure SQL database, but they do not know where to start. Or if you wonder if being in Azure environment will limit your work as a DBA, then this is the session for you. And Deepthi is a SQL Server Database Administrator with several years of experience in administering SQL servers, and she's also an MCT trainer. And Deepthi blogs for DBA Nuggets. And Deepthi is also a co-organizer for Microsoft Data and AI South Florida user group and Data Platform Diversity, Equity and Inclusion virtual group. And she's a volunteer for Data Platform Women in Technology user group. And she's a friend of Redgate. Along with this, Deepthi loves art and crafts. And you can also contact Deepthi on her Twitter handle, which is at the rate of DBA Nuggets. So thank you very much, Deepthi, for joining us on Microsoft Azure Pakistan community. And I'm sure there would be many people who will be looking forward to this very interesting presentation on becoming a DBA in the cloud. Now you can share your screen and you can start going through your session.
Are you able to see my presentation in the presentation mode?
Yeah, I can see your screen.
Okay, thank you. I can go ahead and get started then. Hello everyone. Thank you so much for taking your time for attending this session. Thank you so much, Uzair, for giving me this wonderful opportunity to present for the Pakistani user group. I'm so happy to be here. So what are we going to learn today? If you are an on-prem like database administrator or a developer, and in the near future or the coming future, if you are planning to move to the Azure, if your company is planning to move to Azure and you do not know like where your place is going to be once you are into the cloud, if you have those kind of questions, like I believe this session will be right for you, because we will basic ground on how to learn Azure and like what are the responsibilities of the DBA once we move to the cloud, those sort of things. So at the end of this session, stay tuned because I'm going to provide you the resources of where you can go ahead and take this presentation and like you can start your own Azure journey. I will be providing the resources you need. So I'm not going to talk about this presentation. Additionally from what Uzair said, I have been recognized as a Microsoft Data Platform MVP a couple of like a week ago. So I'm fairly new to the group, MVP group. So that's a good thing. And you can contact me on DBA Nuggets at DBA Nuggets, and I have my blog post dbnuggets.com. If you want to know like an extension of this session, and also I started the fundamentals of Azure SQL Database. That's a series of blog posts that I have written at dbanuggets.com. If you are familiar, I'm still continuing to add posts to that series. So if you would like to learn more, visit my website and you can subscribe to get notifications whenever I post any blog post about it. And you can contact me on LinkedIn with my name. I'm very active on LinkedIn and Twitter. I usually post like what are my upcoming sessions. If you would like to go ahead and register or know more about what type of presentations I'm going to present in the future, you can follow me on Twitter or LinkedIn. So one day, Monday, not so fun day for me, couple of months ago, not months ago, actually it's been like a year ago. Um, I used to work for a company. Right now I'm not working for that company, but in that company, it's a regular Monday, and I had my cup of coffee, and we received an email like the meeting request saying like it's an important meeting, which is like a decision making regarding the servers and the databases. So I thought like since everybody is included, like since management is included, I thought like as a DBA I will just be sitting there and I just have to listen to some management decisions. And then as DBAs are included, we went to the meeting. There is also other DBA, but he's like fairly new DBA. So in the meeting, like management started saying that, hey, we wanted to move half of our servers into Azure. And they looked at us like as a DBA, they looked at me as I'm a senior there. And they said like, I'm sure Deepthi is going to take care of this. And I am like, I literally shivered and I was like, the picture that you are seeing in front of the screen, I was like so freaked out because I have no idea what Azure is and I have no idea what components it have and how to move the databases. Nothing about Azure. I have no idea. But then they are promising, like my management promised the departments, the higher departments, that they are going to move half of the servers into Azure like in about like 6 months or so. I was like too super freaked out, and for a couple of weeks I couldn't think anything apart from like moving into the cloud. How do I do that? I have no idea what it is. Like, will my job be there or will I lose my job once we move into the cloud? I was in the panic mode. But then after a couple of weeks, just like the regular, if I have a panic moment, I'll take my time for a couple of weeks at least, and then I'll settle down and I'll come to a realization point in general. So the same thing happened here. I went into the realization point and I thought like there is no point in me freaking out. But then I can take a step forward and I can start learning Azure so that maybe in a couple of months I can get an idea of what I have to do. But my learning should be so vigorous that I have to learn it very quick. So while I started my journey into Azure, I thought like preparing a presentation, like how I started and what are the important components and what can be expected as a DBA moving into the cloud. I thought of making a presentation together so that the other people can learn. So as an overview, we are going to see the Azure deployment options and what are the cloud DBA responsibilities. Um, so when we move into the cloud, the basic important things that we have to know is like what are the options that we have in Azure? What are the purchasing tiers? How much do it cost? Like what options do we have to choose the compute and storage? What are the compute tiers, storage tiers? And we are going to see the demo of like how they look like. And we are also going to see the role-based access control, which is totally new in the Azure. We have a couple of the roles which are like by default and they are not available in on-prem. So we are going to talk about that. And at the end of this presentation, we are going to see like tools of the migration while you are moving your databases from on-prem into the cloud. What are the tools that you need and what are the resources to learn Azure? So DBAs, on-prem DBAs get ready to become the cloud DBA. So what are the cloud DBA roles actually? The role is definitely going to expand because the on-prem servers the way you operate on-prem servers are different from the way you operate things in Azure portal. It is totally different. But then like if you get familiar with it, it will become super easy. So, but then the role is going to expand, the roles and responsibilities that you are doing right now as a on-prem DBA, they are not going anywhere because these databases are just hosted in Azure infrastructure, but then the databases and the data is going to be same. So the things like performance tuning, adding indexes, those kind of things are still going to be there. So these roles, they just add additional roles to your job, but the existing roles doesn't go away. Existing responsibilities doesn't go away. But wait, you might be thinking like Microsoft is going to take care of everything, right? Because that's what we are hearing everywhere. Like once we move into the cloud, there is no need of the DBAs. That I read it many articles, in many valid articles. But the thing is like, yes, Microsoft is going to take care of them, but only the certain responsibilities. Like for example, the backups and the patching that we do manually, the DBAs that they do, those sort of things are taken care by Microsoft, but not everything. The existing responsibilities, you are still going to use them. You are still going to performance tune the queries that are running slow. The new skills, along with the existing skill, new skills are definitely needed because the way you operate in Azure portal is totally different. The way you deploy things, the way you create resources, one of the resources is the database. But then we do not know that it is actual resource when you're on-prem. We simply call them as a database, right? But then in Azure, we call like creating that resource, we will attach the database, we'll put that under a resource, those kind of things we need to know, and then we need to continuously learn these skills because Azure is like an ocean. We have like different components, and as the months we move into the future, they are adding different features, additional features into the Azure. So it's like a continuous journey. It's like a continuous learning journey. So if you're not familiar with Azure, right, we will start from here because this is the starting basic step. This is like a foundational knowledge of what all deployment options we have in Azure. So there are like two main deployment options: infrastructure as a service and platform as a service. So under the infrastructure as a service, we have SQL Server on Azure VM. Under the platform as a service, we have two more options, which is SQL Managed Instance and Azure SQL Database. So when we talk about the infrastructure as a service, we are providing the infrastructure itself as a service from Azure perspective, meaning like you will be deploying the SQL Server on the Azure infrastructure. On-prem, if you are on-prem, you are deploying SQL Server on your own VM. You are going to handle your own VM. You are going to maintain it, like the patching and all. You need to take care of it. But when your SQL Server is on Azure VM, you are not going to take care like everything because some of the responsibilities are taken care by Microsoft. We are going to talk about that in the very next slide. But then we are deploying our SQL Server on Azure infrastructure. That's what we need to remember. And when it comes with the platform as a service, which is SQL Managed Instance, here we can forget about the underlying operating system because underlying operating system, we cannot have access to those, including the files, drives, and everything. We do not have access to that. But then you have complete control over the features and the options that you can choose at the instance level because all you get here is a managed instance, is a SQL instance where you can manage it incomplete. The third option is again under the platform as a service, but it is the Azure SQL database. In this particular scenario, all you get is a database and you do not get a instance or you do not get a VM. Of course, the database itself will be hosted on the instance, but you won't even know where it is actually hosted because you are allowed to only have the database. You do not know where it is actually hosted. And this option is very useful when you are deploying the applications, like the brand new application. If you are building it from the scratch and all you need is a database. And for the latest cloud technologies, if you want to use Azure SQL Database is the best because you do not have to worry about other things like maintaining the SQL Server and then maintaining the instance and handling the VMs. You do not have to worry about that. Let's talk in detail of these options. Let's start with the SQL Server on Azure virtual machine. So as I said, it is similar to the way that you have your SQL Server hosted on your own VM, but the main difference here is that Microsoft is going to take care of the automated backups and security patches here. That's the additional benefit that you have because you are hosting in Azure infrastructure. They should be a benefit, right? And then you can still have access to the operating system, drives, files, and everything. And the other advantage that you have here is, for example, if you have on-prem servers 2008 version, you know that they are deprecated already. So by using this option, a SQL Server on Azure virtual machine, and by converting those on-prem servers into the Azure, your 2008 servers, you're still going to get that extended security updates because you are in Azure. So they are going to extend those capabilities for you. They are going to support you until you completely move to the Azure, like either choosing the managed instance or moving into the Azure SQL database. They are still going to support you until you upgrade your servers. And then the other benefit that you have here is you can deploy SQL Server on Azure Virtual Machine in two ways. You can manually go ahead and install Azure Virtual Machine and then install SQL Server on the top of it. This is a manual process. But then if you want to do it, if you want to deploy multiple Azure VMs, you and then host SQL servers on the top of it, or you want to automate that, there is something known as images, where these are the pre-installed packages of all the configuration and settings. These are like the image where you use that image and with a single click, you can go ahead and install Azure Virtual Machine. And by the time you open up, SQL Server is already installed on that virtual machine. It is automated. And by doing this in automated fashion by using the images, you will also get the infrastructure as a service extension automatically. If you're not using images, then if you want to add this extension, you need to manually go ahead and download that extension. The second option is SQL Managed Instance, which comes under the platform as a service. Here, as I said, like you will not have access to the operating system that is taken care completely by the Microsoft. And then like if you are using if you are having like in-memory OLTP systems and you want to move your things to the Azure, like sorry, I messed it up. I messed it up. I am not supposed to say that sentence here, but in the different slide. So here we are going to have we are not going to have the access to the operating system, but then we have the complete control of the instance-wide capabilities. Like for example, the SQL agent, DB mail, link servers, service broker. These are all the things you can still have access with SQL managed instance, but then you do not have access to the files or drives. And the third option, which comes under the platform as a service, is Azure SQL Database. All you get is a database, like I said, and this is for the latest technologies. Like if you are building your cloud application, brand new cloud application, you can use the Azure SQL Database. Less of a hassle for you, but more of the features for you because it can support until like 100 terabyte of size, and then you do not get operating system or instance. You do not have to worry about any of those things like instant wide features. You do not have to worry about that. You can only access and modify the database level features only here. Let's compare a couple of the features between the Azure SQL Database and Azure SQL Managed Instance. The change data capture is not available in Azure SQL Database and it is available in Managed Instance. Common language runtime is not available in Azure SQL Database, but it's there in Managed Instance. The cross database queries, like if you are having, like if you need to jump in between the databases by using the three-part names, like the database name dot schema dot table name, you can't do that with the Azure SQL Database. But you have something known as elastic queries that you can take the advantage of. The cross database transaction, like I said, it's not available in Azure SQL Database, but it's there in Managed Instance. And uh, database mail is not available because this is a database mail is an instant level feature, and so it is not available in Azure SQL Database, but it's there in Managed Instance. The resource governor also is a instance level feature, so it's not there in Azure SQL Database. Automatic tuning is especially there. It is a feature, it's an additional feature in Azure SQL Database, but it's not there in Managed Instance. So what comes under the automatic tuning? So automatic tuning comes in two flavors. Managing indexes automatically, like with a single click, you can mention a Microsoft to take care of the indexes, like to create any required indexes or to drop any unused indexes. So if it wanted it, if you enable that, it will just make sure like it collects the data and it will pull up the report for you where you can go ahead and review the report and then take the action from there. And there is also other automatic tuning, which is like automatic plan correction, which is used by the query store. So what do that do? By enabling that option, which is automatically enabled in Azure SQL Database, the automatic plan correction. So all the queries are captured within the query store, and then the automatic plan correction will continuously monitor the execution plans that are created for your queries, and it will always make sure the last good plan is the last plan that is being used is a good plan. Let's say, for example, like let's say a plan is being currently used. It's currently being forced by the query store. But then the automatic plan correction will check there is also another plan that got newly generated, but it is performing well when compared with the old forced plan. It will go ahead and unforce the forced plan and then use the new plan, and it will force that new plan so that the next time the query runs, it will go ahead and use the new plan instead of the old forced plan. So that will happen automatically, and you do not have to worry about like monitoring and seeing like what is the current plan that is being used, or is any new plan that got generated. Do you have to change that plan? You do not have to worry about that. If you do not have the automatic plan correction in place, then you need to worry about that. And that thing is in on-prem servers. Like if you are not, like automatic plan correction applies from 2017 and above, but if you are in 2016 servers, on-prem servers, you do not have that option. You have to go ahead and manually check for the newly generated plans. If you force any plan, you need to go ahead and check for any newly generated plans. So that is it. That is especially available in Azure SQL Database, but not in the managed instance. SQL Server Agent is an instance level capability, so that is not there in Azure SQL Database, but it's there in Managed Instance. So what are my responsibilities going to be like when moving into the cloud? So the cost optimization is one of the main important responsibilities because it's all about like scaling up or scaling down in Azure. And if your queries are not performing well, if they are taking so much of resource, then it can become a hassle for you if you are in cloud, because that will you need to continuously pay for the resources that you are going to use. You need to go ahead and scale up and scale up. The graph will go up but not down. But then if you check for your queries why they are actually taking a lot of resources, and if you can tune those queries by working with the developers along with the DBAs, if you can tune them, then maybe the amount of time and the resources they take may be less, because there are like several other factors why your queries are running slow. It can be like indexes, it can be statistics, it can be anything, right? It can be the operator within the execution plan, and DBAs are responsible for that, to tune your queries so that it take less resources, so that you can sometimes scale down your resources instead of continuously scaling up, because scaling up meaning like you're paying a lot of money in Azure. So it will become the responsibility, the core responsibility of the DBA to tune your queries. So if you're not like an expert at tuning your queries, I highly suggest you to go and learn those. Like start working on tuning your queries and get that practice, because that's one of the main important responsibility. And then monitoring the performance. Like once you set it up, the database, you will not like, okay, my database is currently in Azure, so I'm done. I'm done. I'm going ahead and I'll take the rest. It is not that way. Even your database is actually hosted, working fine, working well. All the queries are running perfectly fine. You need to continuously look at the monitoring, how the queries are being performed. You can go ahead and look into the features like performance insights within the Azure. That is one of the feature available to look into. Like it's like a portal showing all your queries how they are performing. You need to continuously monitor. If you would like to set up the alert, right? Like mm, if the queries are using this much of resources, like if it hits 30%, send me an alert. Those kind of alerts needs to be taken care by DBAs. If you are in Azure, doesn't mean that you do not have an outage. It's just like your servers are in Azure, somebody else's computers, and they promised us with the SLAs, the service level agreement, that the database will not go down. But that doesn't mean that your application will not go down, right? Your application, whenever it is not connected to the database, it is up to the responsibilities of the application developers and the DBAs to work together to make sure everything works fine. So you are still going to be responsible and play the role just like the way you used to play when you are in on-prem servers. Automating the tasks. Some of the automated tasks, like you can automate um, optimizing your indexes, like reorganizing, rebuilding the indexes, um, or automating the jobs by using the PowerShell or CMD commands. It's still the job of the DBAs to take care of those tasks. And when you are performing the migrations, when you are migrating your databases from the on-prem to the Azure, then it is the DBAs who are going to take care of the responsibilities, like how to design the plan itself. Okay, what are the databases that we have currently? What are their sizes? What are the resources that we need? Compute and the storage resources, and how much we can scale up so that we can accommodate the next couple of years. Um, and what is the current plan? How do you plan the migration? You need to work with the different departments who are included, along with application management, as well as the um, database level management roles. If there are any leadership people, you need to work with them together, because they are looking up to you as a DBA, and they are looking completely up to you, even for the money wise, right? How much it can cost. So there are a couple of things that you need to take care, that you need to definitely know about the cost. What are the compute tiers? What are the purchasing tiers? And there are certain tools where you can take advantage of while moving your databases from on-prem to cloud. You can take the advantage of those tools to estimate how much your databases can be cost once moved to the Azure. And leaving a couple of the responsibilities to the Microsoft, like For example, the patching. You don't have to worry about any buying of the hardware because that's virtual, right? You need to scale up and scale down, and hardware is taken care completely by the Microsoft. You do not have to worry about the patching. You do not have to worry about the upgrades. Sorry about that. Uzair, can you still hear me?
Yeah, you are audible. You are audible.
Okay, good. So Windows upgrades and patches are going to take care by the Microsoft. SQL Server patches as well, and automated backups as well. They are going to take care of it. You need to just schedule you need to let them know like how much of retention you need, those kind of things. And there is also different levels of security that the Microsoft is going to take care. But then even when you have the different layers of security, you are still going to choose what, because there are different options in security. You need to make sure like you are hitting the turn on button, because not all the security things are automatically by default turn on. You need to make sure which option is right for your databases. And automatic tuning, like I said in the previous slides, you need to do the automatic plan correction and automatic index tuning. Um, when we talk about index tuning, like I said, we'll get the reports, and it is up to you to make it automated, or you can leave it and then um, not take any action. So we talked about the basics, like what are the responsibilities and stuff, but what about the cost? What are the purchasing and the compute tiers available in Azure? So there are two different purchasing models that we have. One is the database transaction per unit, which is also known as DTU, and the other is vCore model, which is the latest one. And it is highly suggestible by Microsoft to only use like vCore model, because if you use the vCore model, you will have the advantage of getting like some percent off, like some percent of discounts, like up till 40% of discounts. So when we talk about the TTU model, we have basic, standard, and premium. But what is this database transaction per unit? It is like a bundle of resources together. That means you cannot differentiate, you cannot separate the compute and the storage, like the memory storage separately. If you choose like for example 5 DTU, there is this some amount of storage and the IO, and then storage, IO, and the compute along with the memory and CPU you cannot differentiate between, you cannot separate that out. It's as a whole, as a bundle. If you do not want the storage to be some amount, but then you want more memory, you cannot do that with the DTM model, because everything comes under the bundle. So that comes under the basic, standard, and the premium. As you go from the basic to premium, the cost for the DTU will increase, but also the performance will increase. When it comes with the vCore model, here you have the ability to choose the compute and the storage separately, right? Because sometimes you might need storage less, but then the compute more. It also have the general purpose, hyperscale, and business critical, three of the tiers here. And as you go from the general purpose, business critical, and hyperscale, the cost will increase, but also the features also will increase, the fastness, right? The latency, low latencies. And by using the vCore model especially, you have the Azure hybrid benefit. Now, what is the Azure hybrid benefit? Azure hybrid benefit is where, like, if you have the older versions of SQL Server, if you have the on-prem licenses already available, and if you want to move to the Azure, then you can trade off those licenses and to the Azure. By trading those off licenses to the Azure, you can gain the advantage of, like, you are going to pay less, of course, and then also get the discount up till 40%. And then if you can reserve certain amount of capacities for up till 3 years to up till 5 years ahead of time, then that will also give you a certain amount of discount up till 40%, I believe. And if you wanted to move to SQL Managed Instance from your on-prem servers directly to the SQL Managed Instance, then the only option to choose is vCore model. You cannot choose DTU model. The only place where you can choose the DTU model is for the Azure SQL Database. Now let's talk about the service tiers. Service tiers. So under the service tiers, we have general purpose, business critical, and hyperscale. These service tiers comes under the vCore model. Since the DTU model is like basic, standard, and premium, and as it comes under the bundle of resources together, there is not much to talk about. But because Microsoft is highly suggesting to use the vCore model, we are going to focus more on these service tiers for the vCore model. So under the vCore model, we have general purpose, business critical, and hyperscale. As you move from left to right, the cost will increase, but at the same time, there are also low latencies, like the fastness will also increase. So for the general purpose, this is like generally available to the general business purposes. Most of the businesses will use this because it is a very low budget model. And all you have is one primary. You will not have any secondaries readily available. If you want to, if you want to move it to if you want to fail over in any chance, to create the secondary available replica, it takes some time when compared with the business critical. But then it will take some time, but then you can create the secondaries, you can fail it over. It's not like if primary goes down, that's you are down. It's not like that. But it takes like a couple of seconds to minutes to create that secondary readily available. And especially under the general purpose, again, remember this is under the vCore model, right? We are talking about the general purpose. Under the general purpose, we have two more compute tiers, which is like the provision and the serverless, which we are going to talk in the very next slide. But the general purpose will handle up till 80 vCores, and it can handle up till 4 terabytes of space. When we talk about the business critical, this is like this is most of like you do not want to have any latencies in your business. You want to have like low latency, and also you want to use like secondaries readily available for your read workloads. That's when you will use the business critical option. And if you have any OLTP in-memory OLTP systems, this is the only option you can choose. Like business critical is only supportive for the in-memory OLTP. So we have low latencies here. Of course, the cost is high when compared with general purpose because we are adding more features, right? We have like readily available secondaries here. And it can handle up till 128 vCores and can handle up till same size like 4 terabytes of space. And when we talk about the hyperscale is like a elite we can say, because it can handle up till 100 terabytes of space and very low latencies. And if something happens, we have like point in time restores, and we have up till 4 readable replicas over here readily available. So how can that much of a big database can have point in time restores in a very like no time we can make sure the database is available. And there is this technology where they cache the data in the memory itself in the cached layers. That is the algorithm they use for the hyperscale. So we can have point in time restores in span of no time. And this can handle up till 80 vCores of vCores as well, up till 80 vCores. And when we talk about, especially for the vCore model, under the general purpose, like I said, we have two more compute tiers, provision and serverless. So if you are choosing vCore model and choose the general purpose and choose the provision underneath that, that means like you're saying, I am paying the amount of for this compute resource that I'm using. I am paying ahead of time, like I will be paying ahead of time, no matter if I use this much of resource or not. So these are the fixed amount of resources, even though you use it or not. Like if the database is not being used much, it's certain amount of times, you are still going to pay for those resources that um, you have fixed. But that is not the case with the serverless. For the serverless, you have the option um, to pause your database during certain amount of times, like when your database might not be active. Like for example, let's say we have an application, like a timesheet application, where the users only will have access to the database, like they will be only connecting from, let's say, Friday till Monday. We can only make sure like database can be available during that time frame, but then we can make sure we pause the database during the other periods of time, so that you do not have to pay for the entire compute resources, like for the memory, CPU. You do not have to pay for that, but you will be only paying for the storage during that paused time. And while setting this up, while configuring the serverless option, you will be choosing like how much minimum and maximum number of vCores you want to choose, because once the users hit the database during that active time zone, right? Active time zone when the database is up and running, you do not know whether 100 people can access or like million users are accessing the database. So you want to make sure that you are accommodating those needs. So you will be choosing the minimum and maximum number of vCores you want, so that the database will only scale up and scale down based upon how much the resources are going to be used, only between those two limits, minimum and maximum number of vCores. It won't go outside of that limit. And it will be billing the resources that are used per second basis. And you will be, like I said, when the database is in the paused mode, you will be only paying for the storage and not for the compute. Now let's talk a little bit about network security. I know this slide is looking like little bit of too much, but then let me explain it in a simple words. So when we talk about network security, we have four basic options here. As you go from left side to right side, the security and I mean the the network is secure when comes from left side to right side. It is more secure. The least secure one is from the left side, which is like the first one, allow access to Azure services. Now, when you go ahead and click on this option, it means like any resource in Azure can connect to your database. I mean, when I say any resources coming from the Azure, not from the on-prem. So we cannot connect to the on-prem when we click allow access to Azure services. We can only allow any resource in Azure can connect, which is not secure, right? But then you might be thinking, why did they even have this option in the first place then? So let's say you are going to build a developer machine or developer database. You wanted to play around for a couple of days or weeks, but then you do not want to deal with the security complexity, like network security complexness. Then you just want to connect to it and check all the settings, and then settings how your databases are connected to your applications, and you wanted to play it around and then drop the database once you are done. Then in that particular situation, you can just go ahead and click allow access to Azure services, because you do not want to deal with any of the complexities for time being, right? So that's when you wanted to use this for development purposes. So as this is using the public IP address, if you do the NS lookup and see the details, all the details like the DNS hierarchy are publicly shown. That means the region where this database is hosted, the control ring information, all of the data is being publicly available, which is not secure. The next one is firewall rules. So when we talk about firewall rules, it is similar to the firewall rules that you create on your on-prem servers. So to connect to the Azure SQL database, if we choose firewall rules, you need to add the firewall rule to each and every resource that is connected to the Azure SQL database. which will be tedious if the resources that are connecting to Azure SQL Database are like many. In general, we will have many resources connect to the database, right? And then here, the Azure SQL Database can connect to the on-prem servers if you choose this option. And if there's resources, and if your virtual machines, let's say virtual machine is a resource, and you want to connect to your Azure SQL Database, and you wanted to add the firewall rule, and if that virtual machine is actually using the dynamic IP address, then it is not possible to use firewall rules because the IP address change, right? So that's not a secure one. But if you're adding like couple of servers which have static IP address and you added those to the firewall rules, yes, you can access the Azure SQL database. But then if you do the NS lookup, your region, control ring information, all of the DNS hierarchies, information is still shown, which is like, again, using public IP address, which is not secure. So the third option is virtual network rules. So here, um, any number of virtual networks, different virtual networks connecting to your Azure SQL database, those all virtual networks needs to be connected by using the latest technologies like VNet to VNet peering, and then there are other technologies, VPN gateway, those kind of technologies. Using those technologies, different virtual networks can be connected together, and then those virtual networks will be connected to one virtual network, where that virtual network is connecting to your database. So your Azure SQL database will be connected to only one virtual network, and you are going to connect to that uh, virtual network, and you will be creating one virtual network rule on that particular virtual network, which is connected to your Azure SQL database. And all the other different virtual networks will be connected by using those technologies to this virtual network where we hosted the virtual network rule. And here we will be having the private IP address, but then still, if you check the NS lookup, the control ring information, region information is still available, which is not secure again. But it is secure when compared with the last two options, the firewall rules and the first option, allow access to Azure services. And the more secure one is the private link, where we will be creating the private endpoint, meaning like once you created the private endpoint to the database, your database will get the private IP address. And any resources that they want to connect to the database needs to pass through this private endpoint. There is no other way to connect to the database because the internet connection will be gone here. You cannot connect to the internet. And if you do the NS lookup, as it is using the private IP address and we are disconnected to the internet, none of the information will be shown in the NS lookup. Let's talk about creating the virtual machine. Creating the virtual machine, like why we are creating the virtual machine here is like creating the virtual machine, and then we'll go and build the Azure SQL database and then connect to the Azure SQL database from this particular virtual machine, sorry. So we are going to create the virtual machine. In order to create the virtual machine, we are going to log in into portal.azure.com. If you do not have an account, you can create a free account for 30 days. I believe you'll get like around $200 of $200 or $100 of um, credit to use for the first 1 month to just play around the resources, creating the resources and use the features. So go ahead and search for the virtual machine. Once you click on that, it will show like virtual machine tab. You can go ahead and click on create. Once you click on create, it will ask you for all the things that you have to provide here. The first thing, any resource that you want to create in Azure, the main important thing that you have to provide is a subscription. So you need to provide the subscription, and any resource that you wanted to create needs to go under the resource group. So you will be creating the resource group. You can create multiple resource group and place your resources based upon your needs. You can group them and put them under the resource group. So I am creating the DG demo resource group here. And then I'm going to provide the virtual machine name because we are going to create the virtual machine here. Where do you want to create the virtual machine? Give the region. And then you will be creating like security type, what kind of security type. You have a couple of options over there. You'll be creating that. And you can select the image. So underneath the image, you can go ahead and choose what machine you want to build, what virtual machine, what is operating system. So I'm going to choose Windows Server 2019 data center here. That is a Gen 2. I choose that one. And then once you choose that, you can choose the size as well. Like depending upon the size, you will the fee per the month will be changing. You can see. And then once I clicked on that, for example, I wanted to see all the sizes. So I clicked on see all the sizes here. That will open up like a window, but focus more on the black one because the red color highlighted one only costed me like 7.39 $7.39. But then once I choose that one, my virtual machine didn't even open that up because it did not have proper resources. So I upgraded it to B2S, which is also under the general purpose. But then right now I have like 1280 max IOPS. And if you see the vCore CPUs, how many I have, and the cost per month is like $30.37. That actually is it's pretty good. I can open up the virtual machine, I can connect to the database and run some queries on the top of it. So I choose that. And then you need to provide the administrator account, the ID and password, confirm the password. And then you need to, I'm leaving everything as default right now. I'm not adding anything else. Review and then create. But then you also have to go to the other different tabs while creating the Azure virtual machine. So underneath the disk, how do you want to select the disk? You can choose the premium SSDs. You can choose the uh, whatever storage type you want, this type you want, you can choose that. And then once that comes under the networking, here we have to put our virtual machine on certain virtual network. You need to provide the virtual network name. If you do not have one, you can create one here. And while you choose the virtual network, it will provide you the subnet information automatically popped up. And it will also provide the public IP address here. Sorry, the public IP automatically popped up again. And then you can see if you want to choose any public inbound ports. And then you can select the inbound ports, like how do you want to connect to your virtual machine. I choose HTTP and I choose RDP because I would like to connect to this virtual machine by using the RDP. So I will be choosing that. And then I will choose all the review and then I will choose the create option. Click on create, which will say like deployment is in progress. Again, we are only going through the manual process. We can definitely make sure we do the same thing by using the bicep language, or like we can deploy these by using the images as well. But here we are doing it manually, right? So your deployment is complete. Go to the resource, click on go to the resource. And then this is how your resource look like virtual machine. If you see the resource group name, where it is actually located, the location, and then the operating system, all the details are here. The public IP address, private IP address, all of them. Now click on connect over there and choose RDP, because you remember we choose like, how do you want to connect? We choose like RDP as well. So it provides RDP. Whenever you click on RDP, it will download a RDP file for you. So click on connect. It will go ahead and open up a RDP remote desktop connection. Provide the credentials that you used to create the virtual machine in the first place, and then click on connect. That's how you'll be connecting to the virtual machine in a regular way. But then we are going to create our Azure SQL database and then connect your database by using that virtual machine. So again, go ahead and click on Azure SQL in the search bar. That will open up this page. And then here we can see all of the deployment options: SQL Database, SQL Managed Instance, and SQL Virtual Machine. Now, before going into the Azure SQL Database, see the right side, SQL Virtual Machine. It has a drop down and you have all the options here. Like these are the images. These are the images that you can choose, and with a few clicks, you can create the virtual machine. And by the time you open the virtual machine, your SQL server will already be there, because in the image name, you can see what is the SQL server and what is the Windows operating system version you want. But we are creating the SQL database. So click on the SQL database, create. Again, you need to provide the subscription details, the resource group, and then provide the database name. The database name should have actually follow certain requirements. Like if you see, the database name should only match this pattern and only these many characters, length and all. You can do that. And then you need to create a logical server. Now you might be thinking like we are just creating Azure SQL database and you just told us like you will only get the database and not the server. Now why are we creating a server here then? Now, yes, this is just the logical server, meaning you'll be connecting to the Azure SQL database by connecting to this logical server. It is not a real server. It is just a way to connect to your Azure SQL database, let's say by using your Management Studio. So let's go ahead and create that logical server. Click on create new. Here we are going to provide the server name, the location where you want to create, and then the authentication. While creating the Azure SQL database, you definitely have to provide the SQL admin login ID and password for sure. So even though you select the use only Azure Active Directory, you're still going to create the SQL Server login ID and password. Click on OK. And then you want to choose the elastic pool if you want to use the elastic pool. So elastic pools are nothing but like a bundle of um, resources accessing multiple databases together. They are sharing the resources between the databases. So if you want to add this database underneath the SQL pool, you can do that, but I'm just creating the independent database. And then you can go ahead and click on compute and the storage, configure database. Once you click on that, you will see all the options that we have talked about under the service and the compute tier. Remember, we talked about general purpose, business critical, and hyperscale. That is when it is shown here. Under the vCore model, it is shown general purpose, hyperscale, and business critical. Under the DTO model, it is shown basic, standard, and premium. We want to use the general purpose under the vCore model here. So click on that. Do you remember under the general purpose, if you are choosing the vCore model, we have two more compute tiers, provision and serverless. So here I want to pause my database because I don't want to, once my demo is done, I do not want my database to be active and charge me for that. So I want to use the serverless. That is the cheapest option I can choose. So I would like to go to serverless. And as I choose the options, the numbers and the digits will be changed right side your screen of how much it will cost per month. And always remember that the compute and the vCore will always cost per second basis. And the estimated storage cost per month for this particular database is 4.78 USD, which is like nothing because I do not have much tables in it. I'm just creating the brand new database, right? The empty one. So you can go ahead and choose how many maximum number of vCores, minimum number of vCores you want, because as your database is active, it can only scale up and scale down between these resources that you choose. As you go ahead and choose those, as you go ahead and increase this vCore maximum and minimum, the digits will be changed right side your screen, like the number of dollars. And if you want to auto pause, what is the auto pause delay? I would like to choose the default, which is 1 hour. Enable auto pause, meaning like if your database is inactive for 1 hour, it will go and pause the database. If you choose like 4 hours, upon the 4 hours of no activity to the database, it will go to the pause mode. And then go ahead and choose the database max size, how much max size you want. And then would you like to make this database zone redundant, meaning like different zones within the location where you are hosting the database. It will go ahead and make sure we have the backups at different locations. I would like to choose no. And then also it will have the backup storage redundancy. There are 3 options here. Locally redundant, meaning it will put the database backup copies in the locally where the database is hosted. The second one is zone redundant, meaning like, let's say I'm in the state of Kentucky. Let's say we are hosting the database in Kentucky, meaning that it will have the backups in the location where I hosted the database. At the same time, in different locations within Kentucky, that is the zone redundant. It have the backups in place at different locations within Kentucky in the same zone. But geo redundant, meaning it will place the backups in the local area where you hosted the database, but also it will make sure it have the backup copies across the world. And these backups are placed um, not simultaneously, uh, uh, but then they will be placed at different times asynchronously. That's what I mean. And then go to next, networking. And underneath the networking, I would like to place the firewall rules as no. I do not want to add my current IP address. Um, if you want to create any private endpoints, you can go ahead and create one. And then connection policies. So there is like default connection policies. I put it as default, and then you need to definitely encrypt the connections. I mean, it is by default enforced for you to select this particular TLS version. It is by default selected, but then you can go ahead and change that. If you would like to go ahead and use the latest TLS version, which is also um, compatible with your application, and you have the encrypted connections enabled from your applications, then you can go ahead and change that. Underneath the security, you have like several options like Azure Defender for SQL. It is not free. You need to pay for this service, 15 USD per server per month. But then if you have any vulnerability issues, if your configuration is not set proper, like if you need to change the configuration and this is not the standard from Azure side, it will provide you the recommendations by using this Azure Defender. It is highly suggestible to purchase this. And then you can go ahead and choose like how do you want to create the database. Do you want to just create the name of the database, or do you want to just get the database from the backup, or do you want to just create a sample backup copy which is automatically created once you click on sample? I just want to create the empty database for now, and then I can go ahead and change the collation. The default collation is always the same, but then if you change the collation, this is the right time for you to change, because later it is not possible to change the collation. And then you need to select the maintenance window. When do you want to make sure your databases are backed up? When do you want to make sure the database is being maintained? For any like indexes or like statistics, you need to go ahead and change the timings. You can choose different timings, but then I want to put it as a system default, which is from 5 p.m. to 8 a.m. And then if you want to create any tags, so these tags are nothing but like you can actually name this particular resource underneath a tag, and then once you tag them, you can look for the amount of money that is being cost for these resources underneath these tags. It becomes easier for you to manage the resources and then manage your money when it comes with how much you are paying for the resources. They like tags do not do any action by themselves, but these are just the way like how much this particular resource cost me having this particular tag. Review and create. It takes a couple of seconds to minutes to create. And then once it is created, go to the resource. Right now, you are seeing the database, Azure SQL database that you have been built. And right side your screen, it shows as a server name. So click on the copy to clipboard to copy the logical server name. That's the logical server name. And then you can go ahead and connect by using your management studio from your virtual machine that you have built. So connect to the virtual machine by downloading the RDP file like I showed previously, and then provide the provide the server name here, copy and paste, login ID and password because you provided the SQL Server login ID and password. So provide that and click on connect. That will open up um, an instance kind of connection. It looks like an instance, SQL Server instance, but if you observe properly, it is just the logical server um, with the databases. So you can have one logical server and create multiple Azure SQL databases underneath that particular logical server. So I have two databases here. I have created one later. So that is the reason you are seeing two databases, but we have created AdventureWorks. That's how you'll be creating the Azure SQL database and connect from your virtual machine that you created. Right now, we are going to see the basic default role-based access control. So when we talk about role-based access control, it is like what can and cannot be done to the resources. By having the owner role, a person can do everything, like read, modify, and assign the resources to the other people. And they can also make the other person as an owner of the resource. Um, and the contributor, they can do everything like read and modify, but they cannot give the permissions to the other people to read or modify. Reader, it can only read the resources. And these permissions can be hierarchy. They can start all the way from the subscription till the databases. Like you can mix and match these permissions. You can only give particular person permissions at the resource level and not at the subscription. You can change these permissions as well as you need. So to see how these roles look like, go to the logical server that you have been built, and on the left side of your screen, click on the IAM access control. That will open up this blade. Go ahead and click on add and add role assignment. So once you click on add role assignment, you can see these three default roles: owner, contributor, and reader. You can assign the members to this role. For example, we wanted to give the contributor role to someone. So click on contributor, hit on next. And then in adding the members, you want to add a particular member. So underneath the select members, click on select and choose a person who is in your organization, Chris Green, let's say. So click on them and then you can go ahead and give the permissions to them. So click on next. And then what do you want to give the permissions to as a contributor and what is the scope of that particular contribution? So you are giving underneath the particular subscription only to DG test server if you see the scope. So we are only giving the permissions at the logical server level to the Chris screen, review and assign, and underneath the role assignments after you have given the permissions, you can see the Chris screen has a contributor role to the resource, the logical server resource. And let's talk a little bit about intelligent performance before closing the session. So under the intelligent performance, like I said, once you open up the database, Azure SQL Database, underneath the intelligent performance blade, left side your screen, click on automatic tuning, which comes in three flavors like force plan, which is like automatic plan correction. It is automatically turned on. You can turn it off as well. And then create index and drop index. Like I said, like once you create this one, once you click on, you'll get a report where you can go ahead and make sure like you review it and then take action on the top of it. So what are the tools to migrate the databases into Azure? there are certain tools that you need to focus on. Azure Tcpo is a total cost of ownership calculator for estimating the cost. Again, this will not give you like exact amount, but then it will provide you based upon your settings, based upon what you choose, what kind of VM you need, what kind of database, what kind of resource you want. You will be choosing those to get this estimation of the cost. And there is something known as SKU recommender for Microsoft Azure SQL um, to actually know like um, all the options. Like it can recommend you what kind of options can be better for your workload. And similar way, you have like data migration assistant as well to check for any compatibility issues. If you are on-prem, you might have already known, like if you are using the older SQL servers, you know, like there is this data migration assistant that you can use to go ahead and make sure if there are any compatibility issues with the code and stuff, like the joins, those kind of things, like older joins that have to be converted into left and right join. Those kind of compatibility issues you need to check before moving forward into the migration. And you have SQL Azure Migration Wizard. Again, these are the tools that you can use. Azure Database Migration Services is also available. I believe this cost a little bit for using this service, but then it is worthwhile. So the key takeaways are like DBA jobs are not going to go anywhere, but they are still going to be here because as you saw in this presentation, we talked about a lot of information related to indexes, related to execution plans, related to performance tuning. Our jobs are not going to go anywhere, but then our roles are going to expand, which is a good thing, right? We are going to learn the new skills. We are going to put our hands in the Azure portal to learn how to navigate through things, accessing the resources, creating the resources, managing the resources, using the intelligent performance, right? Using the intelligent performance insights. And also, it is less maintenance when compared with on-prem because we are not going to do those tedious tasks like maintaining the patches, doing the patches, taking the backups over and over and over again. We do not have to worry about that. Instead, we can focus on more important things like how to decrease the cost in Azure, like how to manage like your queries where they can run fast, taking less amount of resources, those kind of things we can focus on. We can save a lot of money as well because we are not buying any hardware here, and easy to scale up and scale down as you optimize your queries. If they take less amount of resources, you can scale it down. And it is easy to learn, right? All the things that we have seen today are a couple of clicks, but I did not use any code. I mean, we can use the code as well to create those bicep files and stuff. You need to learn, but then we are still in the beginner phase to learn, right? It is easy to learn and anyone can get started. You do not have to be a DBA or developer. Anybody can put their hands into even without knowing any code. And these are the learning resources. Like I said, dbanuggets.com, my website, I have created a series of posts in depth to learn for the beginners, especially for the beginners. So I started like the fast track, a quick track, sorry, not fast track, quick track into Azure SQL. Please follow my website to know more about it. And also I have placed all the resources that you need um, to all the resources that you need to start your Azure Journey. So please follow this link so that you can go ahead and look at those resources and get started. These are the resources I used to prepare my presentation, and all the best to the future cloud DBAs. And I would like to thank Uzair one more time for the wonderful opportunity to present for your user group. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Deepthi. It was a very informative presentation. And I'm also
Yeah, if
working
you'd
in
like to
the
contact me, again, this is my contact information on Twitter as well as LinkedIn.
Yeah, thank you very much, Deepthi. It was a very interesting presentation. Will you be sharing your slides with me so that I can also put it in the in the meeting link?
Sure. Let me go ahead and give that very. Let me go ahead and do that for you. I think it's on my GitHub. I think it is already there here, but then give me a minute. I'm going to.
Sure. And if you can also share the URL for your GitHub. That will also be very good.
Did I forget? I don't know. Let me see. I mean, I do not have to log in actually to find, but then let me see. So let me see all the repositories that I have. It should be somewhere in the.
Yeah, but take your time. We're not in a hurry. No problem.
Yeah, this is the one.
Okay, perfect.
Can I put that in the chat window?
Yeah, that would be good, really.
Yeah, that is one.
Perfect. Deepthi, I have one question related to the Azure SQL database. I would like to know that if how that database will scale vertically. Will it automatically scale, or you have to scale it manually?
We have to scale it manually.
Okay. Does this
But
mean
maybe
that you
we
have
can.
to?
Go ahead.
Does it mean that it will interrupt anything with the database operations when you are going to settings and scaling it manually?
I don't think so. Because it is pretty fast. It won't block anything. And you won't wait until the last moment, right?
Yeah,
You'll
that's
be
right.
checking the performance, how the things are going, whether you will be getting those notifications, and you'll be if you set up with the alerts, then you'll get the alerts, and then your users will be complaining automatically. So
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, thank you so much, Deepthi, for a very informative presentation today.